Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Crunch Time here on Amateur Sports TV or ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, alongside my good friend Scott Tobin. Scott, how are you, man?
I'm good, Joe. How are you, bud?
I'm doing pretty good. It was a nice day out. I had a late Mother's Day lunch with my mom. It was good, man. Um, what did you end up doing with your mom on Mother's Day? Did you get to spend any with her?
We're gonna spend next Sunday together. She was actually down at the lake over the weekend, so we're gonna get together and do some stuff next weekend. I think we're actually gonna go downtown and maybe go to the Arch and possibly go to Union Station. And then with COVID and everything, she hasn't been down to Ballpark Village since everything opened, so we may go down there and have dinner or something.
That's awesome because I've seen a new stuff happening at Ballpark Village, and it looks pretty cool. I was walking by as I was leaving the game. I believe it was last Wednesday, toward the end of the second game of that doubleheader, and I was looking into Sports Social. That place looks very nice.
Yeah. Yep. And there's some new shops down there. Anybody that goes to Ballpark Village and goes shopping and you're a baseball fan, I definitely recommend that you go into the Baseballism store in the new Live by Lowe's hotel. They've got tons and tons of baseball themed merchandise, T-shirts, hats. They've got some really cool stuff. So I suggest baseball fans go in there and check it out.
Can you buy jerseys and stuff there? Is it just T-shirts and things like that?
It's T-shirts. They don't have jerseys in there, but they've got St. Louis themed stuff. They've got like Major League the movie themed stuff. They just got all kinds of different baseball T-shirts and different stuff made out of baseballs and just a lot of really cool stuff in there.
And with the announcement that we will have in a little bit here, that downtown's going to get a little bit busier. You know what I mean? So it should be fun. It should be a fun downtown starting in late May against the Cubs. That should be fun. So I wanted to start with the NFL first, and an interesting inkling that our buddy Theo, and I'm looking at this. Pardon me for this, but I'm looking at this because he sent me kind of a scenario here, and I want your thoughts on it. Okay, so how you take care of Aaron Rodgers in this situation? Get rid of Jordan Love. He's minimal cost right now. If you rid of Love, sign guaranteed money for the next 4 years, tool with Rodgers as your guy, and find another better QB in the draft better than Love. Nothing is invested in Jordan Love except drafting him in the first round. Take what you know is great. Would you entertain that, yes or no?
So why would you do that? And here's my question for that. So basically, you're going to give Aaron Rodgers a 4-year contract, which means he'll be 42 going on 43 if he plays all 4 of those years. And then you're going to get rid of the guy that you made your number 1 draft pick last year, and you're going to have to invest in another number 1 draft pick to get another quarterback a couple years down the road that you don't know that you're going to be able to draft anybody better than Jordan Love. And then you're going to have to try to start all over again. That makes absolutely zero sense to me.
Okay, I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with you because I agree with you, but the only thing I would put into that, Scott, is during garbage time, and there was a lot of garbage time with the Packers blowing out teams. Jordan Love was not – they didn't put him in the game. They put the other guy – I forget his name. They put him in the game instead of Jordan Love. Don't you think Jordan Love would love that experience? No pun intended.
But that's not what they drafted him for. They drafted him to watch and learn. He didn't even put on a uniform last year. They didn't draft him to play last year. They drafted him to watch and learn. And that was the plan this year. But Aaron Rodgers has thrown a big wrench in that. And what's to say that if they trade Jordan Love and they draft another quarterback, Aaron Rodgers doesn't get mad about that? So how does that scenario fix anything?
I know. I was reading that, and I'm like, I don't know if that fixes anything. I wouldn't do that. I think Rodgers is gone before Love is even touched in terms of a trade. So, I just don't see that. And there was another theory that he puts out there, and I know you disagree with this already. He said that the quarterback with the highest upside is the quarterback from Alabama that was taken. And Mac Jones, thank you. The quarterback from Alabama that was taken in Mac Jones. He's in a good situation. And he's in New England. So do you think while he's in a good position, do you think this maybe ups his upside a little bit? Or do you think he's absolutely wrong?
He's in the best situation of any quarterback that got drafted, because you're going to go to a New England team that spent a ton of money in free agency to address their needs on the offense. They've got Dante Hightower and some of those defensive players that sat out last year coming back. So he's in a really good situation in New England. But as far as having the most upside, no, absolutely not. Out of all of those quarterbacks that got drafted in the first round, if you're going to talk about pure upside and pure talent, I would say Mac Jones is at the bottom of that list, to be totally honest with you. He's a system quarterback. He's a guy he's not very athletic. He's not mobile. He doesn't have a really strong arm. He is accurate, but he's going to dink and dunk and be a game manager for the most part. Trevor Lawrence by far has the most upside of any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And then second, I mean, you can make a case for Justin Fields. You can make a case for Trey Lance. I mean, you can even make a case for Zach Wilson. I mean, I know he's in a bad situation in New York, and I feel sorry for the kid, honestly. But yeah, I would say Mac Jones again. It wouldn't surprise me if Mac Jones is the first one of those guys to get to the playoffs and win playoff games because of the situation he's in. But as far as talking upside and where he's going to be in 10 or 12 years, I don't see him being anywhere close to those other guys.
Well, you saw where Tom Brady was drafted, and he didn't exactly – when he was drafted, Scott, did you think he'd have as big an upside as he's having right now? Where he was drafted?
Again, you have to talk about the system that Brady was in. And he sat for a couple – you got to remember that Brady sat for a couple of years, first of all, behind Drew Bledsoe. And then he was in the perfect system. If you go back and look at those Patriots teams, the first 2 or 3 years that Brady was there, Brady didn't do a whole lot. Those teams won with their defense, number one, and then their running game, and Brady was just a game manager. It wasn't till probably, his 5th or 6th year in the league when he got Wes Welker more defined, and you brought in Randy Moss that Brady really started throwing the ball downfield. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, Brady was – I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Tom Brady, but in a lot of ways, Brady was a system quarterback for a long time in his career.
Yeah, you can't argue with being a system quarterback, and you're talking about Tom Brady. That is for sure. The other news really is the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to sign, if they haven't already, Tim Tebow as a tight end. Now, my question is here, what does he bring to the Jacksonville Jaguars, if anything at all?
The name Tim Tebow, going back to Florida, being reunited with Urban Meyer, who is his head coach at Gainesville, which is right down the road from Jacksonville. So it's a publicity thing as much as anything. Those two uniting, Tebow back in Florida. He's never played tight end in his life, not in high school, not in college, not in the pros. I mean, he fought this idea for years and years and years and would rather go play baseball than even attempt to play another position in the NFL. Does he make the team? I guess it's possible, but to say that I expect much of anything out of Tim Tebow as a tight end in the NFL, especially at his age, is it like 32 now? So, I think it's just more of a publicity thing than anything else.
Yeah, and Theo actually chimed in on that last point. I don't mean to go back to it, but he goes, which is why I think Mac Jones will have the better upside for a decade, better on both sides of the ball. Do you see his argument there, or is he crazy?
No, I understand. He's going to be in a good spot as long as Belichick's there. But, I think like I said, in the long run, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be better And I think Jacksonville is going to be good a lot faster than people think. I mean, they've got some real talent on the defense that they've drafted in the last couple of years. You brought in a guy like Travis Etienne who has all of that experience already with Trevor Lawrence, and Urban Meyer's been putting that offense together for months. We know that now that he's been talking to Trevor Lawrence. This offensive game plan is built around him. I'm not saying Jacksonville is going to be a playoff team right away, but I think Jacksonville is going to be a lot better than people think quickly. And I think Trevor Lawrence, like I said, I think he's the next. I'm not going to say Peyton Manning, but I think he's the next guy in that upper echelon of quarterbacks. And I just don't think Mac Jones, with his talent, is there.
All right. Time will only tell, Scott. Now, there are some rumors, and a Deshaun Watson rumors come up. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last night that, everybody is talking about Aaron Rodgers, but the Deshaun Watson thing is going to be the next big soap opera to keep an eye on. And, we haven't heard anything about in the court system. The lawyers haven't talked at all. There's some rumors that there may be some kind of settlement or agreement coming in the near future that settles all of that. And, there are rumors that Deshaun Watson could end up being moved before too terribly long. It sounds like the teams that are in on him are the teams that one of the teams that we've talked about all along, the Denver Broncos. If they don't get Aaron Rodgers, may pivot back to Deshaun Watson. Although right now, the team that all the experts seem to think would be the front runner is the Philadelphia Eagles. And that would be really, really interesting if Deshaun Watson ended up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think it'd be a disaster if he went to Philadelphia. He didn't really have options in Houston after getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins, and you go into Philadelphia. Who's your number one target? Nelson Aguilar, please. I mean, he's not a bad wide receiver by any means, but I don't think he's a number one.
No, and the Eagles drafted wide receivers in the draft. The Eagles are a lot better team than the Texans are. There's definitely more talent there. And I know we haven't really talked about it, but real quickly, Joe, just for all of our Cardinal fans out there, the Cardinals just tied the Brewers in the top of the eighth inning. It's 1-1 now. We'll get deeper into that a little bit later, but just a quick update.
Can you tell us what happened?
Harrison Bader led off the inning with the base hit. Matt Carpenter pinch hit and walked. Tommy Edman grounded out. We had a double, or actually Tommy Edman struck out. Then we had a double steal, Bader and Matt Carpenter. And then a sacrifice fly by Dylan Carlson.
Dylan Carlson. Wow. We'll get into that in the next segment. That's for sure. Scott, will you be paying attention to the schedule reveal tomorrow for the NFL?
I will be because it's going to be really interesting to see how that all works out with the 17 games. And I'm going to be paying attention, especially to the Cleveland Browns, because I'm going to be getting some tickets to go up to Cleveland to catch Browns games. So I'm going to be checking out their schedule, figuring out when I make that trip to meet some friends in Cleveland later on this fall.
Who would you want to go see, Scott? I mean, out of teams in the NFL, give me a quick list of 5 teams you want to go see.
Well, like I just said, I'm going to Cleveland.
No, I mean this against Cleveland.
Against the Browns?
Yeah.
Steelers, Baltimore. They're gonna play the North. So if Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay, that would be a fun game. Browns Bears, just old school rivalry. I mean, 2 of the legendary teams in the NFL would be interesting. And then even the Bengals, just because of the rivalry that there is. Any of those North teams, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals, that's a lot of fun. So yeah, those would be the top 3.
Quickly before we go to break, you think it'll be 100% capacity everywhere by then?
The NFL's planning on it, so yeah, I think so.
All right, and I'm hoping so too. And when we come back, we were talking some Major League Baseball and a huge announcement by the St. Louis Cardinals. Stick with us right here on Crunch Time. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Joe Hamilton alongside Scott Tobin. Major League Baseball, this is a huge announcement for the St. Louis Cardinals, and I kind of want to start there. They're going to be doubling capacity starting later this month against the Chicago Cubs. It's a weekend series. Great timing for the Cardinals in that aspect. And there's a mass vaccination site at Busch Stadium beginning tomorrow and lasting 3 days. But go ahead, Scott, and tell us the details that you know.
Real quickly, talking about the mass vaccination at Busch Stadium. If you go to Busch Stadium over the next 3 days and get vaccinated, they are giving you 2 tickets to a Cardinal game, upcoming game this season. So pretty good deal. If you haven't been vaccinated, go down to the ballpark, get vaccinated, and get tickets to see your first place St. Louis Cardinals. And then jump into capacity. They will double it. That would be the 20th, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah.
A week from Friday against the Cubs. Capacity will be around 26,000. So the ballpark will look a little bit more full. It'll be loud downtown, and more Ballpark Village will be opening. Budweiser Brewhouse will be opening. Salt and Smoke, the new barbecue restaurant in Ballpark Village, will be open next week. So, new restaurants, new places downtown at Ballpark Village for fans to check out. And then, more fans in the ballpark. It'll be loud for a Cubs-Cardinals series. That's the perfect series to increase capacity, and that's kind of what they've been shooting for a while now. So that's great to hear. And then hopefully, if things go well, people get vaccinated and numbers stay low. Hopefully sometime mid to late June, we'll be at 100% at Busch Stadium. And that'll be an amazing thing when that ballpark is absolutely full, especially with the way this team is playing. It'll be electric in that ballpark down the stretch.
Yeah, and especially with this team deserves to play in front of a full crowd. And one guy in mind should experience a sold-out Busch Stadium, and that's Nolan Arenado. He's already had 2 curtain calls. His first 2 curtain calls in the major leagues, which I find that crazy enough. I mean, we talk about that all the time, but that's still baffling, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. You wonder what was going on in Colorado that he never got a curtain call there because, while those teams weren't great, they did go to the postseason a couple of times. So that's kind of hard to understand. So talking about the Cardinals playing a big series in Milwaukee starting tonight. And like we gave away a little while ago, the Cardinals tied it up 1-1 in the top of the 8th. And then we go to the bottom of the 8th. And to start the bottom of the 8th, Giovanni Gallegos hits the first batter of the inning. So the Brewers have the go-ahead run on first base right now. But good pitching matchup in this one. Peralta for the Brewers was really good, had the Cardinals off balance. KK pitched for the Cardinals tonight. He limited the damage. Again, I know I'm not a big fan of KK. What did you see? Because, he gave up 5 hits. 4 of them were doubles. But to me, I just don't – he doesn't seem to have a whole lot on the ball.
No, he doesn't.
Low to mid-80s. Go ahead, Joe.
I agree. And I was talking to a friend tonight, and I basically said the same thing. He goes – and I basically told him what you told me, and I agree with. There isn't much life on the baseball. There's not much movement on the baseball. And when it is, it just seems flat. Now, I kind of want you to explain to people watching, what does it mean when a baseball is flat? Like coming out of a pitcher's hand, because it took me a while to figure that out too.
There's just not a whole lot of life. There's not a whole lot of movement. If you watch his pitches, there's really there's not much life to him. The ball doesn't jump out of his hand when he throws it, and really there's not a ton of movement on the ball either. I mean, to me right now, the biggest thing to him is that he's getting guys out because they haven't seen him yet. He's still surprising people. People don't have a book on him, and he wasn't real sharp tonight. I mean, he was throwing a lot of 3-2 counts. A lot of balls right down the middle. The guys were just off on because they hadn't seen him and hadn't gotten used to his speed yet. You saw him as he got later in the game. Like you said, he gave up 4 doubles. And guys were getting that second, third look at him, and they were waiting for that changeup and that slider because they're just kind of flat, low to mid 80s, just kind of sitting there, and guys were jumping on him. So I'm curious to see what he does moving forward as more and more teams get a second, third look at him around the league. Because as we've talked about on this show multiple times, and I've made my opinion pretty clear that most Japanese, Chinese, Asian pitchers, that sounded kind of bad as I said that, but a lot of Asian pitchers in the major leagues have a really good go around their first year or two, and then when hitters get a good look at them, get a book on them, it seems like they get hit around a lot. So I'm really curious to see what KK does as we get deeper into the season, because there's a lot of teams even in our division that haven't seen him yet.
Yeah, and you say in the league, but I emphasize in our division, because you're playing every team in NL Central 19 times. So what is that, Scott? About maybe 8, 9 starts? 5? I don't know. What does that equate to?
Depending on how the rotation works out, he's probably going to pitch to every team, 3 or 4, maybe 5 times. So and that's where it's going to be interesting when teams get that 3rd, 4th, 5th look at him. Or do they know what to expect, and are they lighting him up? And that's what makes me nervous. And I really think the Cardinals are going to have to go out and get another pitcher. And the same thing. That's just like Miles Michaelis. We talk about him coming back and not sure what to expect, but Michaelis kind of had the same thing when you think about it, because that first season that he was here, he had a great year. But hitters hadn't really seen him because he'd been in Japan for a couple of years. He'd learned a couple of new pitches. He came out and he had a different look. When you got to the end of that first year and into the second year, he wasn't quite as good because guys knew what he was going to throw and they were waiting on pitches and they were able to hit him a little bit better. So I'm curious to see what Michaelis looks like this year when he comes back. I'm curious to see what KK does the rest of the year. And I really do think the one thing this team's going to have to do at the trade deadline is go get another big-name starter. And unfortunately, talking about the starting rotation, one of the bright lights of this rotation so far this season, and a guy that I'm a lot higher on than most people, Carlos Martinez, is going to miss a couple of starts because, unfortunately for Carlos, he twisted his ankle, slipped on the steps in the dugout the other day. And, people are going to say, oh, this could have happened to anybody. He went to celebrate with his buddy Jack Flaherty after he hit a home run. Apparently, somebody had spilt water on the steps, and Carlos slipped and sprained his ankle. And, that could happen to absolutely anybody. And we've seen lots of people get hurt celebrating other guys' accomplishments. Look at Cody Bellinger. I heard somebody talk about this today. Cody Bellinger celebrated a home run in the World Series last year so hard with his teammates in the dugout that he's had to have shoulder surgery because of it. So this is not just a Carlos thing, because a lot of people are going, oh, look at Carlos Martinez goofing off when he hurt himself. That's not what this was. This was Carlos trying to celebrate his teammates' accomplishment and an accident happening. But hopefully, from everything we hear, it sounds like he's only going to miss maybe 1 start. But unfortunately, it's going to happen against the Padres, which means Johan Oviedo is going to pitch Friday night against the Padres, and I don't have a good feeling about that at all.
Well, the good thing about that, Scott, the minor good thing, I guess, if you want to call it, Fernando Tatis Jr., the biggest star in this game right now that isn't named Mike Trout, has just tested positive for COVID. And he's going to have to isolate from the team for 10 days. So the way I see it, the Cardinals dodged a bullet in a sense. Yes, they have, 7 more hitters that can take you a yard. But not having to face Fernando Tatis Jr. is a huge plus.
It is. Oviedo hasn't looked overly impressive in his couple of starts this year. He's been a little wild. He's a young kid. He's got a ton of talent. I just don't like that matchup for him against the Padres with that lineup. Hopefully he proves me wrong. But, yeah, it is a huge break that you don't have Fernando Tatis Jr. And Tatis Jr.'s had a rough year with injuries and everything else. He's missed a lot of time already this year.
Yeah, he has. But he's still been one of the top hitters in baseball. I think he's kind of, messed with his swing a little bit, so he's not over swinging, but he still has that big time power. So it sucks for the game of baseball that he's not going to be playing, but at the same time, as a Cardinals fan, I'm kind of like, you know what? Cardinals dodged a bullet. But then again, again, that's a scary lineup anyway. Moving on to the game tonight real quick. What are the Cardinals swinging at? I know that slider's nasty. I get it. But how do you not lay off that pitch? I mean,
it's a lot harder to do than it's easy to say it when you're watching it on TV. Why are they swinging at that? But it's a whole hell of a lot harder to do when you get in the box and you have, a tenth of a second to make a decision on whether you're going to swing or not. And the Cardinals have done a really good job this year compared to last year and in years past of laying off sliders for the most part this year. Peralta was just really, really good tonight. But again, they fought and got back into it. And we've got to talk again about the guy that started that rally who looks like a completely different hitter this year. And believe it or not, Harrison Bader got that hit off of a slider to start the 8th inning.
Yeah, Harrison Bader, if he can just get that offense right, I'm saying if he can be a 270 hitter even and get on base, that's a scary proposition for the opposition because you get him on base, that wreaks havoc on the base pass.
Hey, guess what Harrison Bader's batting average is right now?
What?
268.
Almost like I knew that. Almost like I knew he was hitting close to 270. If he can continue that, though, you know what I mean? There hasn't been a lot of a track record to tell me that he can do that consistently. I hope he can, but I'm still gonna have that question until we get to July and August, and that average is still up there.
Here's what I'm going to say: Harrison Bader right now, after tonight, he has 46 at bats. Harrison Bader struck out 5 times. He's walked 8 times. That tells me right there that Harrison Bader's seeing the ball really well and he's got a plan because for him to have 46 at bats and only strike out 5 times, that's huge. And if he can do that with his speed and his defense, hitting at the bottom of the lineup, that's everything you could ask for from Harrison Bader. Plus, he's already got 8 RBIs this year, and he's stolen 4 bases already. I mean, he's doing everything that we've always hoped that Harrison Bader can do.
Yeah, he's doing things that we all wanted him to do. Scott, you hit it right on the head because Harrison Bader doesn't need to be the power threat. He needs to be the guy that gets on base. Is the 8 hole the best spot for him, Scott?
You know what? I really kind of liked it when he was hitting in the 7 hole when Yachty wasn't there and you had Kisner behind him. Just because, when you've got him in that 7 hole and you've got the 8 hitter, you can do so many more things with him because you can really take advantage of his speed. Because if you've got a guy that can make good contact in that 8 hole, you can hit and run. You have a better chance of trying to steal. If it's a tough pitch, you have a chance of a better fouling off. So in one way, I kind of like him in the 7 spot. But the way our lineup with Yachty and everybody back in there, for right now, I think the 8 hole is probably where he's going to have to be.
Yeah, I hope he keeps progressing because that is a great spot for him in my mind too. Now let's go to the Major League Baseball scoreboard. You have the San Francisco Giants taking down the Texas Rangers 4-2. You have the Cleveland Indians taking down Chicago Cubs 3-2. The Cubs now under 500. Yay. Cleveland is going to be up there with the White Sox in terms of winning that division. There's another team that really shocks me, and I will talk about them in a second. The Pittsburgh Pirates beat the Cincinnati Reds 7-2. The Oakland Athletics take down the Boston Red Sox 3-2. You have the New York Mets taking down the Baltimore Orioles 3-2. And you have the Yankees taking down the Rays 3-1. Games going on right now. You have the Philadelphia Phillies beating the Washington Nationals 6-2. That game's in the top of the 6th inning. The Kansas City Royals and Detroit Tigers are tied at 7. That game's in the 9th. The Toronto Blue Jays are beating the Atlanta Braves 5-3. Cardinals and Brewers tied at 1. End of the 8th. Minnesota and Chicago. Chicago wins this one 5-3. And that's where I wanted to stop real quick. What the hell, man? Minnesota was a team that won a division last year. They're now 12-21. Or they're going to be 12-21 if they lose this game.
It's pitching. Their pitching is not where it was a year ago. a year ago, a couple of years ago, I think they're actually, although he's hurt in Houston, I think not having Jake Odorizzi in that rotation has hurt them a little bit. They didn't really do anything to fully replace him. So I think that's a big loss in that rotation. And they just got guys in that rotation, and it's not really working this year. And they're an older ball club, And while they've got some sluggers, you're talking about guys like Nelson Cruz and Josh Donaldson. Those guys are getting older. And then they're missing a guy in the middle of that lineup, and Eddie Rosario, too, who was a big bat, who is not there now. So they're just not the same team. While we're talking about the Central, we have to talk about the White Sox for a second. I don't understand. I mean, that team is in first place. And I literally read an article today about Tony La Russa, and somebody said they don't think Tony La Russa is ever going to be able to dig out of the hole that he's got himself in. He's got that team in first place. They have the best run differential in the American League. His team's winning, and people just want to pile on and say, "Oh, he's too old. He's not this. He's not that. He can't relate with these guys." Well, obviously he can, because he's gotten the team into first place, and they have an unbelievable run differential. People I know there's a lot of people that don't like Tony La Russa because of the fact that he's always been a winner, and so they want to criticize him. They want to find a reason to complain about him. But for people in Chicago not to embrace this guy who started there, came back, wants to help the team win, and is one of the greatest managers in all of baseball, I just don't understand it.
I don't understand it either, and I really don't have much to say on that, because I'll go off on a tangent and it's going to take forever. So I'll leave that for after the show. I'll talk to you off air, because that just makes no sense to me. So you got the Houston Astros taking down the Los Angeles Angels, they're taking them down as we speak, 5-1. That game's in the 8th inning. You have the San Diego Padres beating the Colorado Rockies 4-1. That's in the 6th. You have the Miami Marlins and Arizona Diamondbacks. Arizona is winning this game. That game's in the bottom of the 3rd, 1-0. You have the Seattle Mariners and Los Angeles Dodgers. Seattle's on top, 1-0 there. And both teams are one game above the 500 mark. Scott, tell everybody what we got coming up here on Crunch Time.
Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about the St. Louis Blues. We'll kind of recap their game last night and talk about them as they prepare to make that run towards the playoffs here in the next week.
So catch that up next here on Crunch Time.
Hey Crunch Time fans, my name is Graham Forsyth. I'm the host of Coffee with Graham and the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. On Coffee with Graham, I talk to athletes, coaches, and whoever else involved in the amateur sports scene in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And on the Prospect Show, I talk to the best young hockey prospects from around North America. You can catch all the coverage on ASTV Productions. You can catch Coffee with Graham on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And for the Prospect Show, that show airs every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you there. Have a good one.
Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, alongside Scott Tobin. The St. Louis Blues played their final game against the Los Angeles Kings last night out in Los Angeles. The game was tied at 1 until overtime, and then you had Justin Falk coming through in the clutch. Scott, the one thing that actually, there are multiple things that worried me about last night. They just didn't seem to have the intensity. I guess it's because you already clinched the playoff spot. You don't want to get hurt. And secondly, the shots on goal through 2 periods. I think I started watching in the second period and literally had 5 shots on goal. 5 shots on goal midway through the second period. Is that something to worry about? Is that something that, they weren't really trying their best out there? What was it?
Yeah, to steal comments from our friend Alex Ferrario today that I was listening to. That game, it was a boring game to watch. It was a game that really had no meaning. The Blues were out there just playing because they had to, but it didn't really matter what happened in that game because they're locked into their playoff spot, and they kind of played like that last night, that they were just kind of going through the motions, trying not to get anybody hurt, just get through these last couple of games and get into the postseason. And I think you're going to see the same kind of thing in this game tomorrow. I think, there's really nothing for them to play for at this point other than just trying to keep people healthy and trying to get their line set as you head into potentially the playoffs, which, we're not sure yet. They could start as early as Sunday.
Well, there is a game happening Saturday, and that's the Boston-Washington series. That's going to get underway Saturday on NBC at 6 o'clock. So I guess we'll know the schedule as we get closer, but I'll ask this question here in a second because I want to stick on the Blues. Jordan Binnington played well last night. He was a rock when they needed him, only gave up one goal, but again, it's the LA Kings. You can't measure Jordan Binnington on that. You need him to come through against teams like Vegas, which probably you're going to face in the first round. How do you think Jordan Binnington played last night? How do you think he looked? Did he look like a confident goaltender?
Yeah, he played fine. Again, nobody really played. It was just a game. There was it didn't matter, so they were just out there playing. But yeah, he played fine last night. He got him to help him get the win, and again, it's all about just trying to stay healthy and be ready for whatever these playoffs finally start.
We talk about Justin Falk with the game winner last night. What a difference a couple years makes. This guy is probably the most important defenseman on your roster without Colton Parayko really being there all year. So I look for Justin Falk to have a good playoff. I really do.
Well, and when you think about it, that's where it started last year was the bubble. Remember, the Blues got him in the offseason last year. He kind of struggled all year, was having a hard time fitting in, and it was really in the bubble last year when he started to come into his own and seemed like he fit in with this team and was starting to figure it out. So like we've talked about so many times, when you bring in a new guy from a new organization, it takes a while for them to fit in and figure out what they're supposed to do. And I agree with you. I think he will have a good postseason. And, hopefully the Blues make some noise. It's not going to be easy. They're probably going to play Vegas, which we know that they haven't exactly had the best time with. And, we'll see what happens. But, they're going to be in the playoffs, and that's a big thing. Like I said last night, I just hope that they at least are able to win a game or two in that series and don't get swept. That's the biggest goal. I hope they win the series, but I at least want them to show up and be competitive.
Exactly. Being competitive is the most important. And they have two more games against the Minnesota Wild that on Wednesday and Thursday. And Scott, I'll actually be going to my first game since COVID started, hockey game that is. So that should be interesting in itself.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. I know you'll enjoy it and have fun. And glad you're finally getting to get back down there. Hopefully the next time you go, there'll be full capacity.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully we see that. There are two series already locked up, and that battle of Florida between Tampa and Florida probably actually I think will be the best matchup in the first round, Scott. I mean, you got Joe Quenneville and his Florida Panthers facing the defending Stanley Cup champions in the Tampa Bay Lightning. That could be – that's in my mind. I know we haven't done our predictions yet, but I'm already going to put it out there. That's a 7-game series.
It definitely could be. It definitely could be. That'll be a fun series. Two Florida teams, not all that far apart, where they play their home games. So it'll be interesting. And like you said, Quenneville's a good coach, and then you're going to go up against the team that won the Cup last year, and I'm sure they feel like they have another run in them. So that could be a very good series. Although, how many times have we said, "Oh, look at this series. This is going to be a 7-game series," and then one team gets hot and it ends up being a sweep. So you just never know what's going to happen. Like you always say, once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yeah, I always say that too. You never know what's going to happen. I get blasted for that all the time. It's true though. I mean, you can't say otherwise. Well, Scott, before we get to our predictions, I guess next week or whatever, the NHL still doesn't have a plan on what's going to happen after the first 2 rounds in Canada. I don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come out of this, because the borders are still not open. There are lockdowns in Canada. What's the NHL? I mean, there has to be a a timeline here where you have to get a plan done by this date because the playoffs are starting. Don't you think the NHL would have a plan by now?
Well, the NHL can have all the plans they want, but so does the Canadian government.
Well,
the NHL doesn't really have any control over that. So, I'm sure they're working with Canada, trying to say, okay, we need you to loosen the guidelines. We need to play playoffs, but the NHL's kind of got their hands tied, with what's going on in Canada and what the Canadian government want to do. So, I'm sure they have a bunch of different plans and a bunch of different ideas, but I think they're just having to wait and see what happens as we go forward.
Yeah, it'll be something that, is probably going to happen very quickly. I could see a plan coming to fruition at least maybe in the next couple of weeks, Scott. I mean, I don't think you'd want to plan this on a spur of the moment basis. I wouldn't think so anyway.
Again, when you're fighting a virus like this, a pandemic, there's not a whole lot the NHL can do. Like I said, I'm sure they have a bunch of different contingency plans.
Yeah.
But, they've got to kind of play it by ear and see what happens and see what Canada allows them to do. So, I'm not sure that we are going to know anything or hear anything until the very last second, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, it's going to be an awkward situation, that is for sure. One of the matchups for the playoffs actually had a game tonight. You had the Boston Bruins taking on the Washington Capitals. And the Capitals win this game 2-1. How nasty do you think that series is going to be?
It's going to be ugly. It's going to be physical. It's going to be tough, and should be fun to watch for hockey fans.
It really is going to be fun to watch for hockey fans. You have the Vancouver Canucks and Winnipeg Jets. Why, Scott? I know they have to play these games, but is there a point to play these games at this moment? Because Vancouver's way out. It's nice for Winnipeg to win this game, though, because you had a Winnipeg team coming in at 1-9, Scott. They were 1-9 in their last 10, so they won this game 5-0 against the Vancouver Canucks. I'm sure they were glad it's played. I'm sure the Vancouver Canucks thought differently, but don't you think maybe some of these games would get canceled if nothing's on the line?
Well, are you going to start doing that in every sport? They're on the schedule. You can't just go, oh, this game doesn't matter. So in baseball, if all of a sudden the Cardinals, you get to September and the Cardinals are in first place and they're playing the Pirates and the Cubs in the last week of the season and they're both really bad, do you say, oh, well, these games don't matter. Let's just not play them. You can't do that. It's the schedule. You play a certain amount of games. So you can't just go, oh, well, let's cancel these games.
Yeah, I know that's not the way it usually works, but I'm sure some teams are like, do we really have to play? But one game was postponed tonight, and that was Edmonton and Montreal. So your standings read as follows. I'm just going to go through here. You have Pittsburgh on top in the East. You have Washington 2. You have Boston 3, and the New York Islanders 4. That Islanders-Penguins series, which looking like that's going to happen at this point. Yeah, that should be a very fun series. You have the Vegas Golden Knights, Colorado Avalanche, Minnesota Wild, St. Louis Blues. Minnesota still has a chance at that third spot or second spot. And Scott, if they get home ice advantage, does that kind of put a wrench in Colorado's plans?
It could definitely. I'm sure Colorado was planning to have home ice advantage. So yeah, that would change things a little bit. As we've talked about, even with smaller crowds, home ice advantage is going to make a difference in the playoffs this year because you got to remember that teams didn't have that at all last year. So the fans that are at these playoff games are going to be even louder than normal, even though they're not full capacity arenas. And it will make somewhat of a difference. I know Wags doesn't really believe in that. But when you get in the postseason and get these big moments, fans and crowd noise, they can make a difference.
Yeah, they do make a hell of a difference in my mind. Yeah, when I watch playoff hockey, yes, I look at the stellar play on the ice from every team, but I notice the fans too, especially in Game 7 against Dallas. Again, that was a full capacity crowd. You're not going to see that in the playoffs this year, but something like that surely will still happen because you have some fans, and those fans will want to get their money's worth in terms of their being loud. So in the North Division, your top four is Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Montreal. And in the Central Division, you have the Carolina Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Nashville Predators. So this will certainly be a playoff to remember. This will be some fun hockey. So coming back here on Crunch Time, we'll be talking some NBA, and SLU suffering a horrible loss to the basketball coaching staff. That's next here on Crunch Time. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Scott, getting down to get nitty gritty in the NBA. Are you excited for this play-in tournament, or are we close to seeing what kind of what matchups we'll see in these playoffs? And if we are, what are the matchups that you can't wait to see?
Yeah, like we talked about last night, I am looking forward to these playoff tournaments. I think it's going to be exciting basketball. Like I said the other night, I think the team to really watch that could be scary if they're able to win their playing games and actually get in the playoffs is going to be Washington, because of that combination of Bradley Beal and Westbrook and what those two can do. You know, Beal's going to lead the league in scoring this year, and Westbrook, if he doesn't have another point, rebound, or assist the rest of the season, will still average a triple-double for the year. So those guys are just dynamic players, and I think Washington's going to be scary if they get in the postseason. Real quick, I know we're talking basketball, but I'm just going to give a quick Cardinal update because my attention's kind of torn. It's the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, and the only reason, Joe, that this game is still going, Harrison Bader's defense at center field. First batter in this game, he ran down what looked like a double in the left center field gap. The second batter, he ran down what looked like it was going to be a double or a triple, probably into the right center field gap. He ran them both down, 2 outs, 2 strikes here at the bottom of the ninth, and it looks like we might be headed for extra innings.
Are the Cardinals built for extra innings in your mind?
Because of this stupid base runner at second base thing, I don't know that any team's built for extra innings. I mean, it's
in terms of pitching, Scott. Like, are they built for it?
I mean, they're in good shape. I mean, I don't know that any team's built for extra innings with their bullpen, just because, especially in the first game of a series, because you don't want to tear through your bullpen. Cardinals are in really good shape tonight. Diving catch by Dylan Carlson in the inning. So the Cardinal outfield just saved this game and sent it to extra innings by 3 great plays by their outfield. Sorry, Joe. Cardinal bullpen is in really good shape tonight, though, because you've only used Helsley and Gallegos to this point, so you still have a bunch of arms. So I feel pretty good about their situation, and the Brewers have already used Josh Hader for at least an inning, so it'll be interesting to see if they bring him back out again or if they go to somebody else in this bullpen.
Have they gone to Williams yet?
Not yet. So that would most likely be the next guy if they take Hader out.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on this game as long as we're on. So, Scott, I want to go through the scoreboard here real quick, and actually, first of all, I wanted to get back to the question that I asked you. Do we have any update in terms of matchups, and are you excited about, like, not even just the play-in matchups? There are already going to be matchups made for the lower seeds, right?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's totally set yet exactly about seedings. It'll happen in the next week or so. But yeah, like I said, there are going to be some really exciting teams to watch in these play-in games.
Mm-hmm.
Can a team like Steph Curry will Golden State into the playoffs? Like I said, Washington will be really scary. And then, both of those conferences, you're going to have some really good playoff matchups when you get into the playoffs. Where is a team like the Lakers exactly going to end up? They're probably going to end up being the 6th or 7th seed in the West. What do they look like? We talked last night about Denver. I think Denver's scary. Phoenix is going to be tough. Utah is going to be tough. The West is tough as always. The East is going to be interesting. We talk about the Nets. Everybody assumed the Nets were the best team, but we don't really know if the Nets can stay healthy. Can Durant and can Harden and can Kyrie actually be healthy and play through the playoffs? They've all three had so many different injuries and missed so many games. That's going to be interesting. What do the Celtics do? Are they able to play at all? Is this the year that Philly finally lives up to those expectations? Can Joel Embiid kind of lead them, along with Ben Simmons? Can they make that next step? What does Giannis do? It's going to be a really exciting. It's going to be a really exciting playoff. I think last year's playoff in the bubble really were, and I think this year will be as well. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs. And I talked about him a little bit last night, and I mentioned Denver. The kid to really watch is Michael Porter Jr. because the kid is really. We started to see flashes of it in the bubble last year. When Denver made their run, and he's shown signs off and on this year. But since Jamal Murray's gone down, he's really started to find his groove, and it seems like he's 100% healthy finally. The other night, like I said, when he scored 11 points in 2 minutes, it was just a flash of how good this kid is, and all the potential that he had when he went to Mizzou, and everybody thought he may be the number one pick in the draft overall. When he went to Mizzou as a freshman, so he's finally living up to it, and it's good to see.
One kid that I can't wait to see what he does in the playoffs this year is Zion. If New Orleans can I know we didn't. Just Zion, just look at his body, man. It's like I want to see what that kid can do under bright lights.
He's a big, physical, freaky athlete, but I'm not overly impressed with his overall game yet. He's still got a lot. He's still got a lot to improve on. I mean, he's talented, no doubt about it. But I think he's still got a lot of improving to do to really live up to the hype and the potential that he has.
Yeah, I just that kid is going to be uber talented for years to come. Cannot wait to see him. Now, going through the scoreboard here, you have the Minnesota Timberwolves taking down the Detroit Pistons 119-100. You have the Los Angeles Clippers taking down the Toronto Raptors, who have been knocked out of the playoffs 115-96.
First time in 8 years.
Man, how they've fallen. Let's talk about that real quick. Losing Kawhi Leonard. I didn't think they were going to be this bad. I mean, I'm not saying they're terrible, but I just.
I mean, they've had some injury issues. Guys like Serge Ibaka are starting to get a little bit older, and it just caught up with them this year, and so they made it to the playoffs 8 years in a row. Usually, after you have a run like that, you're going to have a couple of down years, and then you kind of rebuild and reassert yourself. So it'll be interesting to see what Toronto does in the next couple of years going forward after this.
You have the Miami Heat taking down the Boston Celtics 129-121. No defense in that one. And I was talking to a buddy earlier today. Eric Spoelstra in Miami does not get the credit he deserves. And I mean, I know his roster gets more credit than he does, but talk about what kind of coach he's been, because it's been a fun ride in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, Spoelstra, like you said, Spoelstra's done a good job. He's never gotten the credit because LeBron kind of, when LeBron and those guys were there, LeBron didn't give Spoelstra any credit. He basically made it seem like he was the coach. So, yeah, there's a lot of that there, but Spoelstra's done a good job. He got that Heat team to the finals last year with Jimmy Butler. And and those guys, and they really weren't supposed to be there. So yeah, Eric Spoelstra is a lot better coach than he's been given credit for over the years.
Yeah, I like to see him get his due sooner or later because he is one hell of a coach. You have the Brooklyn Nets taking down the Chicago Bulls, 115-107. That Chicago team is going to be fun to watch going forward. You have the Dallas Mavericks and Memphis Grizzlies hooking up. You have the Grizzlies winning this game 133-104. You have the Denver Nuggets taking down the Charlotte Hornets 117-112. You have the Indiana Pacers taking down the Philadelphia 76ers. Man, my head just went blank there for a second. You have the Oklahoma City Thunder winning right now against the Sacramento Kings in the second quarter, 60-54. You have the Orlando Magic and Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee's winning this one 94-87 with about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You have the New York Knicks and LA Lakers hooking up. LeBron not playing this game, of course. The LA Lakers have a slim lead right now in the second quarter, 32-29. And you have the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. Phoenix is winning this one 60-48 in the second quarter. People talk about how good of a team Phoenix can be and how they could make a big run. What makes everybody think that? What makes you think that?
You've got a couple of really good players in Phoenix. You got a guy like Devin Booker, who's one of the young stars in the league, and then you've got one of those veterans who, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to win a championship, although he's been a great player for a long time, and Chris Paul. And, those two guys kind of make that thing run. And, yeah, I mean, they could definitely make some noise, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the playoffs for sure.
Phoenix and Utah, I think, are the teams to watch in the West. Especially Utah is an enigma, though. They could be anyway. They could be a really good regular season team and just flame out in the playoffs. You don't see that, do you?
No, and they were good in the postseason last year. A Utah team led by former Mizzou head coach Quinn Snyder. So, the Utah's a team you're going to have to watch. Like I said, there's a bunch of teams in the West that could really make some noise this year. And, the team that's going to be, the team that I hate to talk about, that it'll be interesting to see how healthy they are going into the playoffs and where they land in the Lakers. Is LeBron healthy? Is Anthony Davis healthy? Can that team make another run? I don't think so. I don't think they win this year. I really hope they don't. But it'll be interesting to see what they do in the postseason.
Yeah, and you'd think LeBron would play tomorrow, and we'll see how healthy that ankle really is. Before we go, Scott, man, there was a huge loss for SLU. Go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, SLU lost their young assistant coach, 29 years old. Health issues. It was a horrible loss. You hate to see that happen, and SLU's lost way too many coaches. You go back to the late great Rick Majerus, who lost his life while he was a SLU coach, and you lose a young coach like that who was an up and comer in college basketball. Related to Coach, he was related to Travis Ford. Part of Ford's family. So you hate to see that happen. You hate to see anybody that young pass away, but especially a bright young coach who leaves a young family. He had a couple of young kids and a wife, and you feel sorry for him and Coach Ford and their family and the entire SLU family, because it's just a sad day for the whole university.
Did this catch you by surprise? I know that he was battling issues, but were they – I'm sure you followed this, Scott. Was it always maybe dire?
No, I wasn't prepared. I didn't expect him to pass away this quickly, so it was a little bit of a shock because you just didn't see it happening as quickly as it did. So, yeah, definitely a shame. Like I said, you hate to see anybody go that young, but especially a guy that had a really bright future. And real quickly, changing sports while we're talking about young people that pass away way too soon. Former Hawaii coach and former Hawaii quarterback and a Heisman contender a few years ago, Colt Brennan, passed away at 37 today. And again, a young guy who had some injuries. He was a great quarterback in Hawaii, was a Heisman finalist, went to Washington, got drafted by the Redskins, had some injuries, never really had his NFL career pan out like he hoped to. Then he had an accident and had a brain injury and had a rough life after that. The last few years, he's had problems with substance abuse and stuff, and he passed away today at 37. And you just hate to see guys go that young. And again, a guy who had a really bright future and just had some bad luck and some issues, and then dealt with substance abuse after that. But yeah, sad day when you see two really young guys in the sports world pass away.
It really is, and that's way too young. You hate to see that, and our prayers and condolences to their family as well as the colleges that they called home. So, Scott, anything before we go tonight?
Real quick update on the Cardinals. They've got runners on first and third, 2 outs at the top of the 10th. Tommy Edmonds at the plate right now.
It's good to be at the top of the lineup. That is for sure. Well, great show tonight, Scott. Thank you guys at home for watching. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. Do the right things out there. Go get vaccinated. Get 2 Cardinal tickets while you're at it. So get vaccinated, get Cardinal tickets, and hopefully to see you at the ballpark soon. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. See you guys soon.